will not be taking Q&As on this today. I will not be answering questions. If you are on the tubes here, it's set to fan funded only. I don't want to see anyone's stuff. I don't care. I'm not interested. But if you're going to pay to play, then your message can come through. It's not a Q&A. I'm going to cover current event in the world, streaming on both platforms. So hopefully we are public here. Yeah, we're public. All right. So here's what's going on, guys. I'm going to briefly break this down, then I'm going to end this. So Alex Pretti situation. This is not about whether the shooting was legal. I'm not going to argue about whether any of that's justified. I simply want to break down what we know about his history and that he was there not with good intentions. He was there as a criminal agitator. And hopefully these are points I think reasonable people will understand, even if you support the guy, even if you're saying, hey, the police were wrong, ICE was wrong, I think need to be prosecuted. We're still going to state facts. All right, the facts. He was not there with peaceful or good intentions. He was not just a person who showed up to be helpful. Okay, let's be clear on that. And I want to state that for a couple of reasons, and what we could speculate all we want what his intentions were, but they weren't good. All right, number one, he was part of this subversive group that is stalking ICE while they're doing their work. That's not a protest. Using Signal app, which again, the fact that they're using Signal tells me a lot about what's going on with the situation. That tells you how organized it is. This is basically paramilitary type tactics as an insurgency. It's really what it is. This is a left-wing insurgency. Part of this group, getting the Signal messages, this is where ICE is, let's go all show up and harass them in force. Okay, that's not political protest. I've done breakdowns of what political protest is. If you don't like a law, you go to a courthouse, you go to government buildings, you protest outside policymakers, right? We all understand this. ICE doesn't write the law. They don't write the policy. They enforce it. Both political parties wrote the current laws being enforced by them. If you don't like it, you really have to take that up with Congress. You have to take that up with the Congress and Senate. That's who's responsible for those laws. Donald Trump just finally said we're going to enforce them and enforce them to the extreme. The laws are already there. So if you don't like that, you get the laws changed. You protest the policymakers. But so here's the thing. He didn't just show up. He previously has been in an event where he was injured. The week before, he had a scuffle with federal agents and broke his rib that he needed medical treatment for. Okay, we now have a history. We have a history of him being in conflicts with ICE to the point where he got a broken rib. Why? What was he doing? Up in their faces, arguing, creating havoc, interfering. It's how these things happen. It's not by standing back and only filming with your camera from a distance. Not what happens. Okay, number one. We know this is the case. It was all documented medically. Documented. Even CNN talked about it yesterday. All right, so this is what his history was. So people are like, well, he was there to render aid to people. Well, his rendering aid that we saw was him trying to shield someone being arrested. Okay, when you interfere with someone being arrested, that's a crime. That's a felony. No, he was interfering with an arrest. At that point, he was also up there in the faces of ICE yelling and screaming. Okay, broken rib. People are like, well, he was there to render aid as a medic. So why didn't he bring medical supplies? Okay, what did he bring? He brought a hell of a handgun. So instead of bringing medical supplies to render medical aid, what did he bring? Did he bring a normal carry concealed piece, like something I have there? And by the way, I'm not going to judge a person for what they choose to carry. I get it, man. What you choose to carry every day is your very personal choice. I get that. We all have our own choices on that. What we choose to carry shouldn't be a legal matter. But for me as a pew-pew guy, what did he choose to carry? What did he choose to carry? SIG P320. What does the handgun exist for that he chose to bring? And again, I'm not saying there's any problem with us using military weaponry or owning them. It's good for the goose, good for the gander. Weapon was engineered to meet the government's combat handgun program to win the contract. It was specifically engineered as a combat handgun. That's its express purpose. Now, you can obviously own it as a civilian, carry it, shoot it. And if you choose to do that, by all means, that is your God-given right as an American. This is not a easily concealable, easily wearable piece. This is not a compact like my G19. It's bigger, heavier, bulkier. This is a full-size duty handgun that you would normally open carry. It is not particularly comfortable or easy to conceal. You're not going to want to do that. Most people are not going to wear something like that on a day-to-day basis. And he strapped on about $2,500 worth of hardware there. Shows up with a SIG P320 with an extra mag. Now the extra mag I'm not going to knock. I always carry extra mags. With a red dot on it. That's a lot of handgun. I mean, if we're going to talk about how much handgun you might carry, we're at the upper threshold here. This is not like a middle of the road normal which you would carry. This is duty size handgun with a lot of kit on it, a lot of hardware. He chose to bring that instead of medical supplies to an event, not his first one, that is organized there to harass and impede law enforcement. That's not a protest. He previously, the week before, got his ribs broke scuffling with ICE. So what's he do the next one? Leave his ID at home, which he knows is illegal, where he lives. And I'm not saying I agree with this law. I'm only stating what the law is. I think carry laws are stupid. I want to see carry laws removed. If you're an American citizen, constitutional carry. So I'm not saying I agree with the law. He passed a class knowing the law. In order for him to get the CCW that he had in Minnesota, he had to pass a class, including a written exam. And in that exam, he had to pass the test questions. All of them. So he checked a box and passed the test stating that he knows that he is required to have his ID and CCW when carrying his gun. He left them at home, slapped on a full duty size handgun with over 30 rounds of ammo, and showed up at a nice event after he got his ribs broke the week before at the last one. Now, I'm not always right, but what does that sound like? What's that sound like? Does it sound like he was there to render medical aid? Or does it sound like, you know what? Y'all broke my ribs last time. I'm going to leave all my ID at home so you can't ID me. I'm going to strap on a full duty size handgun with a red dot with over 30 rounds of ammo, and I'm going to show up. Now, gut instinct. Gut instinct. Sound like he was there for peaceful purposes, or was he there to get a little payback? You know what? What now? Y'all want to break my ribs in this last one? I'm going to show up this time ready to cap your ass. And if he was there for medical reasons, he could have brought a whole bunch of medical equipment, first aid equipment, instead of a full-size, duty-size gun with a red dot and a couple mags. He could have brought a whole medical bag with that same amount of weight. But he didn't. And he left the ID at home. Why was he there? Why was he there? Keeping in mind, we've now confirmed he's been at previous to this events, has a signal app then on his phone to know when they're happening so he can be part of a coordinated effort. He's already part of a left-wing insurgency. Whatever else he had going on in his life and had been a medic and helped people, kind of besides the point at that point. Plenty of violent terrorists have great, wonderful careers outside of them being terrorists. So again, I'm suggesting that he was not there for peaceful purposes. He was there as a criminal agitator at best. And at worst, he was there looking for some payback. You know, because normally you get into an event like that where you're going up to an event, you know, because you're really not supposed to be there. This is not a normal legal protest in the traditional sense. This definitely falls under stalking and harassing police. He got a broke rib last time. Comes back with a gun. And need I note, not really even in our standard level of concealed carry here. We're in the upper echelon in terms of weight, impracticality, firepower, capacity, cost. No, he was packing a more technical gun than I usually leave the house with. And I am, by most standards, a crazy gun nut. What I normally carry day to day under normal circumstances, he had me outgunned by a small amount. There's your context to render aid. And left his ID at home. So his carry was already illegal. And he knew that. I don't think he is a stupid, uneducated person. I think he's an ICU nurse with a reasonably high IQ who is capable of reading and remembering facts and passing tests and remembering what was on the test. So he knew he was carrying illegal at that point because he passed the test. My take on it, says me. You know, and again, that is not stating anything about whether I think I should have popped him or not. That's a completely separate argument. But let's stop the BS that he was there as just a peaceful bystander. He already had a history of confrontation and injury and violence in these situations. And showed up the next time with a gun. With no medical equipment he was there to help render medical aid. With what? His SIG? What medical aid is he going to render? Finish them off? What medical aid is a nurse going to render that doesn't have any first aid equipment or any equipment on them? I guess he's going to euthanize them out in the field, finish them off. That's the only medical service he was prepared to give with the equipment that he showed up with. Oh, this one's wounded beyond repair. I guess I better put them out of their misery. No, he was there to do harm. And that's just reasonable common sense. What you could argue about is whether the law enforcement who popped him actually knew he was there to do harm. I think any reasonable person could assume that's why he was there at this point. Now, you could argue about whether they knew it. And that's a fair discussion to have. But as far as what we know after the fact, he was there to do harm. And was he stopped from doing that harm? Was he able to pop anybody while he was there? Fortunately, he wasn't. He was the only person who was taken out that day. Through his own stupidity. Whether we feel that was fully justified is its own topic. but his own stupidity and behavior put him into that situation. Any way you break that down. Had he not been there at an event he shouldn't have been at while carrying his gun, he would still be alive. Anybody disagree with that point? I mean, granted, a meteor could have hit his house while he was at home, but setting aside something like that, fair statement. All right, guys. Pretty much all I have to say on that today. Like I said, I won't be taking questions. Any streams I do on the tubes, I'm going to only do fan funded, so I'm not going to see your messages at all. I'm not interested in reading the messages there, but you guys are free to post. It is a free speech zone. So I hope it's been informative. Let me give you guys a bicep shot before we go. Bound by syphilis. And we're out.